Good evening, reloaders. Reloading Bench back with you once again. It is not Father's Day. We'll call this post-Father's Day. Different lemonade. And today we're going to go over a couple things. Some highlights of some things I discovered after yesterday's recording. And then I'm going to remove my version of the press case feeder. Then I'm going to try and install that one. So let's start with a couple things that I didn't mention yesterday, which I thought were pretty cool. As I was discovering how this moves in conjunction with how high or low you have this particular component set up, and that will hold that in place so that it's locked in. Or maybe it's this one. No, I don't think that's high enough. But this will this will hold this in place. And I just wanted to point out just the level of detail. When you look at the teeth, or the, I don't even know what the right term is. I'll call them teeth. Just great attention to detail to make that adjustable, so that you have this at the most correct position. So quite granular levels of adjustment so that those teeth grab and lock in. And again, nice hex based nut and bolt. And as you saw yesterday, I talked about the caliber, the different caliber. So the way to change calibers, and if you look in here, you'll see that there is a notch that corresponds with that. So when this comes in, it locks. So there's no turning, there's no twisting. In fact, if you don't have it locked in, it will turn and twist. And I love how the caliber and even the attention to detail, if you can see that, and the fluting, it just looks cool. Very, very cool. I have not figured out why there's this hole yet, and I'm thinking maybe Jack was at Unique Parts, was thinking about what he did here, and this is just a way to essentially stop brass. So let's say you've emptied out a tube of brass casings, and this would prevent you from dropping in. So it's a nice manual shutoff. And I don't want to pull the spring out of there, but everything has a very snug fit. And talk about snug fit, that was a snug fit to put on. So I spent some time, again, I was trying to be very careful because I didn't want to gorilla force it and then snap something or break something. But I'm going to take I'm going to turn the camera off and grab the Lite tubes. In fact, I showed you yesterday the difference between, as I take the cover off the press, the difference between these tubes. And I don't know if you can see that, you know, I can push that. I don't want to say bend it, because it's much stronger than the Lite tubes, but I can't even move these. I cannot, there's nothing I can do to these because of how thick they are. And let me turn the camera off and grab the Lite tubes. One moment, please. All right, that search was a fail. So when you look at these tubes from the Mag-P, they're thin enough that I can pinch them, but not thin enough that they cause compression or crack. These are solid. So I will show you the Lite tubes once we go over to the press for the case feeder that's mounted right now. So I talked about this mounting to this movable piece and adjusting it on the press. I don't know what I want to call this. The press press pull. It's called the press pull. All right, so that'll happen later. I wanted to point out there's some differences in sizes of wheels between some of the different printers and designers. Again, we'll fit this and see how it fits. This is not a shiny surface like my Gen 1 version 1 is. It looks like it's been sanded and smooth. I also want to point out that there is a screw, a hex head screw, a 5/64 screw that controls this spring and that bolt to allow this to go forward or come back. And since I don't know how this will fit yet, I'm not going to pre-adjust that at this point. So I think I've covered everything. This stays solid. This can move, this shell plate adapter, and then this can move a little bit depending on where the multi-tube actually sets. So I think we're ready for the next stage. So let me move the camera and show you a different angle of my press. All right, we're off tripod here, so you can see what I had to actually do to mount this to my press because of my desire to keep the Inline Fabrication Dual bin mount. So because of the back, the brace, and I don't know if you can see it, there's a screw but reinforcing or attaching the brace to the frame. So to clear all of that and still give me some rigidity, I have a boatload of washers, different number of washers on each. I don't know how many that is. I'd have to get in there and try and count them. But here's a better view of what I did with the Delrin for reinforcement, these spacers or washers too. But if you notice, I'm going to wiggle. Actually, you probably can't tell. This is very easy to wiggle, and if I were to hit that, I could see that snapping because the only thing holding this long bolt in are a couple of extra nuts that I put in, and then one extra nut at the bottom so that it doesn't move around a lot. But I keep it, you know, I have my Lee tray here, but you know, again, this is relatively fragile. Let me change hands and then do a pinch test. I don't know if you can see that. No, it's kind of hard to view. Let me try and come around here and see if this offers a better. There you go. You can see I'm pinching those because they're so thin. And when I take this off, I mean, you can see how thin the tube is there. And this has seen better days. And like I said, this is nice and smooth, and that was smooth, but I put tape on here before to keep that kind of free floating. But I'm not going to video removing the, you know, essentially the two screws. I'll probably take this off first, and then take this off, and then figure out what I'm going to do with mounting. But a little too difficult to do on screen, and not trip over something or throw a couple of F-bombs around because something didn't want to play nice. But that's the plan. Just take these two bolts out, and this will come out, and so will this, and then we'll figure out how this mounts. All right, back in a few. All right, so that was relatively easy. I used a magnet as I was unscrewing each side, and I may have to go run to the, depending on how long a bolt I need, because I may not need all that action in the back there. So back to the tubes. You can see how thin these tubes are and how not thin these tubes are. Big difference. These are the Lee tubes that were required. I added this a couple years back to keep things a little more stable. But again, when you look at what Bart has done with version 4 and how he's structured this whole unit, much more strength and rigidity, I must say. And then when you look at this component, you can see a little powder, lots of dried grease. You see the wear and tear of a gazillion rounds pushed in. And this is from my duct taping action. And again, this was a showstopper for, look at the dust, the dirtiness of, and that's, I only run cleaned brass through my case feeder. But yeah, this was dynamite back in the day. Back in 2018, this was dynamite. Awesome sauce. But yeah, I've dremeled this. I've done a whole bunch of things to prevent, you know, I've had this pop up to lock this in when again, my fault for not paying attention. But this was the bomb in 2018. So I have nothing bad to say. And let me go off camera again, and you'll see the press, the bear press. Okay, naked. And we'll see if these holes line up. Again, I'm not going to do that on camera right now. I will test fit it and show you the test fit. Back in a few minutes. All right, more off tripod. So I have this temporarily rigged up. All I did was leave all my washers on the nut, and I have this snugged up so it's not moving, and it looks like I have a fit. And I did not test this yet, yes, with brass, but I did make sure that when I was putting the frame on, to make sure, so obviously this went on first, and then I made sure to set, there's just the slightest wiggle vertical, I wouldn't call it wiggle, because of the way the slots are cut, to allow you to drop that in its, what I would call its resting spot. And then, okay, we got barking dogs now. And then I did do a dry run. So you are seeing the second dry run. Very quiet, very smooth. And now we are going to see together the very first brass casing. That's a snug fit. That is not going anywhere. I'll pop that out. And I have my depriming die loose because I didn't want to do anything yet. All right, so I'm going to say that that's a success in terms of, I noticed that my my counter is not working, because I think the key is to hit pause and then reset. And let me, there we go. And then to clear it, it's pause and reset again. And I want to say it's still on pause. Yeah, and then you have to unpause it. All right, so pause, reset, unpause, and we should see that go to 1, which it did. All right, so what I'm going to do now is put my inline fab, or at least try and put my inline fab mount on the back of this and see how many washers and or if the nut works. So back in a few. We're off tripod, leftover parts, and this is what I came up with. So I have a washer in between the Inline Fab dual bin mount and the back of the unique parts case feeder, and then I have a couple of washers, more for the length of the bolt than anything else, because I didn't want to go to the hardware store tonight. And I double checked when I reseated everything that this is in its pocket. I'll call it its pocket. But I want you to notice when I lower the ram or raise the ram, depending on how, look at what's not even touching. That flywheel is so, hopefully there's enough light there that you can see that this plastic doesn't even touch the rim. I think that's just phenomenal in terms of attention to detail. So again, there's nothing touching. That flywheel glides, and there's nothing. There's no filament on filament. The only time this, other than the flywheel riding in the groove, the only time this touches anything is when it hits this flywheel. So I will load up some bins and see if they all fit. Back in a second. All right, so Jack, if you're watching, perfect in terms of mount and offset. And I want to say that this thing is, it's not even moving. I mean, I'm shaking my bench and this isn't moving. That is on there. Two things for the wish list. I wish this would tilt. So, you know, I'm looking at this like this. I have to bend down to see it because it's LCD. If that could tilt at like a 20 to 30 degree or an adjustable tilt, that'd be kind of cool. I know beggars can't be choosers. And then the other thing I would add is some type of an adapter to catch wires, to hold wires. So some type of hook that, you know, is maybe something in here, small hook to catch wires or attach wires to when not in use. Again, otherwise they're just going to float, which again, not a big deal. I mean, I could throw them in the bin, but you know, again, just something that came to mind. All right, so now I'll probably put this back on the tripod and we'll work on putting the multi-feed in here, multi-tube case feeder in here and in here, and then we'll be done. All right, the camera's at a really weird angle, but I wanted folks to be able to see what I'm trying to do. I've got the multi-tube adapter, and I'm going to grab the caliber specific insert and undo this nut and bolt. So I'm going to slide this in. Actually, let's do this. Let's lock this in. That is locked in. Let us mount that. So that would be the equivalent of what I was running previously. And now I'm going to attempt. All right, so I think we need to put that. I'm going to take this out and I'm going to pull this all the way down. I'm going to put this back in and lock it in. It is locked in. And then I'm going to, since there's no grooves in here, I'm going to put this on the flat part of the surface here. And then I'm going to I might have to lower that. get the teeth to line up. All right, so the camera's in the way. So I'm going to line these teeth up, and then I'm going to screw this in. So back in a second when I move the camera. All right, so I'll try and shoot this from multiple angles, coming down. So this, all I had to do was loosen this just a tad to maneuver that so that I could have these teeth align perfectly. And this is, like I said, that's freaking solid. It's not going anywhere. And I've got my functionality. As you can see, my press is quite naked, so that we can run some brass and see how things load. That was a handful of brass. And one floater. All right. So, as you can see, my cotter pin has locked the brass from falling. I'm going to pull out my cotter. Something tells me I'm going to lose this. I now have a full set of brass. And I believe that is the last piece on this. And I will rotate. Oops, piece of brass stuck. I don't know which direction I like to rotate better. And because something is not stuck, let me go. I'm doing counterclockwise. I don't know if that's how I will do it going forward, but I'm trying to be very gentle as I do not own this. That was pretty cool. All right, let me load them up again and change the camera angle. And this is why I like this particular bin, because I pour into other bins, and that extra, this mouth allows for a pour. And I put these little mats in just to deaden the jump factor of finished rounds. I'm going to measure how much taller. This is definitely taller. So I don't know if when I purchased this, if I would trim the tubes down a little bit, because if I compare the size of this, it's about the same. All right, that was a nothingness. All right, so we're loaded up again. Let me change the camera angle. Back in a second. All right, so as you may or may not be able to see, that was 46 rounds. 46 casings, rather, or so. Give or take a few, because I know I was finishing the shell plate without additional casings. But again, great to have in terms of... All right, so now you can see a close-up of what's happening down here. Very smooth. Very smooth. Whoops, and did I get another errant brass? What was I doing? I was doing counterclockwise. not load at this speed because it looks like I flew one across the room there. A little slower than this. Oops. And the last set. Yeah, I definitely didn't, so it's closer to 30 rounds, so I must not have reset the counter prior to starting this. Wow. Wow. I'm going to call this a major winner. So I never had issues with the ammo plant functionality or price. I didn't like the electronics. I wanted to stay mechanical as much as possible. So that is one of the reasons I found this type of solution back in 2018. Let's see if my old ass eyes can get that in there. I found this type of solution in 2018, and I've kept an eye on the segment, as you've seen, because I picked up the version 4. I like the changes on the version 4. And then when I saw what Unique Parts had done, I mean, I think the only flaw in this system, from my point of view right now, is this is gray instead of red. If this was red, I'll just write Jack a check, PayPal or whatever form of payment that he would want. But yeah, I'm buying this. I'm going to order this just as it sits. It's a couple bucks. I think you know, what hurts from Australia is shipping, as opposed to, you know, a flat fee of whatever. But I would order this in this exact configuration. I like the idea of the counter to be able to have, and then if I don't want it, I can just remove it. The shell plate, that's not something, you know, I load on this lock and load strictly in 45 ACP, so the shell plate adapter probably isn't something I'd pursue, and this is where I could see having a little hook, something like this with just a hook to hold wires in place, either to tighten them up or when they're not in use for, in fact, that reminds me, let me get my battery and we'll see what the light looks like. So be right back. All right, I have my trusty RAV Power Extreme 20, almost 2700 milliamp hour. Let's make sure I'm plugging it in correctly so I don't destroy either that cable or, and we are on. So because of how I have my bench lit up, I will turn the lights off, and hopefully, it's still light out. It's only early evening. You can see. So let me. Uh-oh, my light went off. Did my battery? Yeah, I don't know why the battery turns off. Light's back on. I don't know why my battery turns off. Does it go into like power save mode? But you've got that light. So if it was dark, and I also have this light, this LED light, which I wish was USB charged. So I think Jack makes a USB light. Mine, unfortunately, is a barrel plug AC adapter because this is so old, before the whole USB craze on adapters and lights. I would opt for a USB version of this. I think I got that from Inline Fab years and years and years ago. Works great, but again, I don't really load in the dark. So, and there again, my battery turned off. I don't really load in the dark, but that is just a great attention to detail for extra bells and whistles. In fact, I try to keep my garage as light as possible when I reload. So I am, without a doubt, zero question, this is an amazing value. It's not inexpensive. This solution is going to be cheaper. I think you're going to come in at right around $100 shipped, if not 90 or 80 because of the competition. But this is not this. This is a robust solution, a case feeding solution that I have enjoyed for 3 years and don't have a bad thing to say. This is a platform. This is a case feeding platform because, and what makes this a platform in my opinion, is because Jack has used the pole, repurposed the pole, whereas previously it was in the back of the unit, and if I had my, where previously it was in the back of the unit and it went straight up for like 2 feet in the air to put all these other things like a bullet feeder, to lock other things on, another light. Just, again, the concept is excellent, but because I like to put things on the back of my press, having him offset this and still being able to use that pole, I believe, for things, additional things. I would order the powder adapter. I forget what it's called. There's just I'm going to go shopping with Jack. Powder type recorder. So again, it just, you know, adhesive onto the Hornady powder drop, and you know what your load is. Same thing with these cards. Data recipe, reloading data recorder. I call them recipes. But again, the case feeder tube, all these other things that mount onto this tube, in my opinion, are what creates a platform and not just a case feeder. The case feeder, I think, is the central hub component to this particular solution. But and I think my final video will be real reloading to show you in action with full dies. So maybe I'll do that tomorrow night. But from the fit and finish and expandability, you know, items like the case counter, the caliber, interchangeable caliber lock, the multi-tube feeder, other accessories that you can put in like the shell holder, all attaching to this back tube here, and I'll show you the back of it here in a minute to show you what it looks like fully assembled from the back. My last off tripod jaunt for tonight. Just simply amazing. I mean, again, I'll call this a platform. This is a system. This is not just a case feeder. And what Jack has done at Unique Parts has, in my opinion, you know, I hate this term, you know, game changer, because I believe this will now be the design that others will want to replicate simply because of what it does. You don't have any drag. It's much smoother. You don't hear anything. It's the attention to detail for all aspects, extremely professional. In fact, I don't know if I said this before, Hornady should look at Jack and Unique Parts and bring them on board, because this is the type of stuff that turns an old design, and I'm not bashing the design, an older design into something that is very, very modern and functional. And I'm not a fan of the ammo plant for, you know, a couple reasons. The size and the cost is there too, but the primarily the size and the space it takes on a bench because of how you have to mount the case feeder and the bullet feeder. You know, the bullet feeder doesn't even mount to the case feeder. It's got its own pole that you have to mount to the bench. So again, not a bash, just not for me. And when I found the first gen of this case feeding solution, that was a godsend, and I've loved it ever since. And when I stumbled across Unique Parts and what they've put together, this is just amazing. I'm pretty pretty at a loss for words here. This is pretty cool stuff. So can't say enough about it. Loving how it operates. Went together smoothly, no issues, fit and finish. Right on the money. Like I said, the only thing, instead of gray, I'm going to buy red. And I want this almost exact configuration. And this is the bomb. I'm blown away. Great stuff. I can't wait to reload on it and actually start turning out rounds. So you'll see that next. Take care.